It's really normal for clients to ask you how you're doing, just like you're asking them how they're doing. But do you actually tell them how you're doing? Do you just keep it simple? Do you keep it generic? Should you tell them how you're doing? Should you be real with them? What if you're not? What if they notice that? I'm answering all these questions and more as I dissect what the internet thinks about this question and what the best answers are in today's video. So here we go. So I was recently on a Facebook group for therapists, and a question came up of if a client asks you how you're doing in the therapy session, which is really common. Clients ask me literally every session when I say, how are you doing? Sometimes they beat me to the punch and they ask me like how I'm doing first. And so this is really common, but the question that came up was, should you actually tell clients how you're doing? Should you lie? Should you be authentic? How authentic should you be? How much should you tell them? And it got into the weeds of all of this. And I was reading through the comments and I thought, okay, this actually would be a really good conversation for a video because there is just not a one size fits all answer here. I think it really is a depends, but there was a lot of comments, some very much for it, some very much against it, some people in the middle. So I want to talk about what my take was on all of this. And then also as I'm going through this, if you have a different take, please share your thoughts in your comments down below so we can have a discussion about this. Okay, so let's get into these comments because I thought they were really interesting. So the first comment was, I say, good. How are you doing? Because therapy is not about me, it's a space for them. There were a lot of responses like this, something to the effect of, I put it back on them and I say, I'm fine, but how are you? Or I'm fine, let's talk about how you're doing or how your week was. And I think that there is a time and place to utilize this. And also, I think we need to be cautious because I don't want to quickly sound dismissive or that I'm being really like closed off or guarded. Naturally, therapy clients want to know about their therapist. At least that's been my experience. And that's not a bad thing. I think we need to be mindful of over disclosing. And I've talked before in a previous video about self-disclosure, when you should do it, when you shouldn't. I'll link that in the description below in case you want to check that out because I go more into the nuance just as a general, should you do it, should you not do it, and all the considerations there. But the comment of I'm good, how are you, and always keeping it very I'm good, I'm fine, very surface level, to me doesn't really seem authentic. I think we can be a little bit more open than that. I don't think we need to make it all about us for any reason, but I do think that it's okay to go a little bit deeper than I'm good, how are you? And I think clients really like the humanness aspect of you being something other than fine. I mean, if you're fine all the time, that's great, but it's not very relatable. It's not very humanistic. And I think clients really want that in a therapist. And for some clients, I definitely have used this, comment before, but I think we can do a little bit better than that. So that's my take on that. The next comment was really interesting. It said, I'm doing well. How are you today? I'm not going to tell them how I'm doing. I don't need that to influence therapy. It's not professional and I'm there for them to perform a service. If my therapist isn't doing well right now, I'd rather not know. I wouldn't hold it against them, but it would still influence my thoughts about therapy. This is really interesting because I can see where the commenter was coming from, and I definitely personally, if my therapist was like, I'm actually really not doing well, and they went into a lot of great detail, I might start to wonder, can they really be present for me today? Can they show up for me? Like, am I saying something that might be triggering for them? And that's my own stuff coming up. Not every client is going to have that reaction, but I could see where the commenter is coming from in that moment because not every client is going to be able to take what you say if you go into more detail than I'm fine or I'm okay and not maybe look into it or overanalyze it. They might even try to caretake you. They might start to worry about you. So I totally can see where this commenter is coming from. The part that I don't agree with is the I'm not going to tell them how I'm doing. I think that that is so black and white. And there are times where we are clearly not doing well. And to be able to say that, to acknowledge it, I think can give the client some context. And again, make us look relatable, make us look human, but also give them a better understanding of why we might be showing up the way that we are. Because let's say I had to cancel last session because I was sick. I think a client would naturally want to know, like, is everything okay? Are you feeling better? And so in that moment, I would be authentic and I would say, hey, I would address it. Like, thank you so much for your flexibility last week. I just want to let you know I am starting to feel a lot better, but I'm still not 100%. And so if I sound a little nasally today, or if I am coughing, I don't want that to be distracting. I just wanted to give you a heads up there. Like, I don't think that that's a bad thing to share. I think that could be helpful. So I don't agree with the I'm never going to tell them what I'm doing. And the commenter didn't say that, but they did say I'm not going to tell them how I'm doing. But I would say it really depends. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments below. The next commenter said, we are human and can have harder days. We don't have to lie and say we are good 365 days of the year. It's about the client, so we don't go into our story or reasons, but we can be real because they can pick on us. They can pick up on us not being 100%. I totally agree. I think that this is so important. Clients absolutely can pick up on things. Even if you think that they can't, they can. Even if you think you're hiding it well, that doesn't mean you are. And there's even subtle signs that sometimes we don't even realize people are picking up on, but they very much are. And so to tell someone really like how we're doing, I think, again, just provides that context and it can help them understand why we're showing up the way that we are. Again, that doesn't come without the risk that they might really look into that or overanalyze that, like I was saying earlier. But to straight up lie and say you're fine when you are clearly like crumbling, I don't know. I think you need to be really cautious about that, because if it's being picked up on the client and they think that you're not being truthful, what does that do to the relationship? Do they look at you differently? And if that's what you were trying to avoid anyways, by just telling them that you were fine, then that hasn't worked out. So I agree with what this commenter is saying about just being human and sometimes having hard days and being relatable and just being authentic in that way. Another person said, modeling humanity and normalizing daily stressors and conflict is so important. And I definitely agree with that as well. It kind of goes back into what the other commenter was saying about like no one's good 365 days of the year. And just even being able to normalize that for a client and to not put on this like facade that I'm good all the time, I'm always fine, I'm always upbeat, I'm always excited. I think can just help them feel like, okay, so that's not what I'm striving towards. Like, it's okay that I am not feeling jazzed like 365 days a year. Even my therapist isn't feeling jazzed 365 days a year. So I definitely agree. With the therapeutic relationship, we're modeling so many things for them. Whether it's something that we're saying or something that we're not saying, we're still modeling healthy communication, relationship dynamics, safety. We're modeling so many things. So to be able to just model the fact that you can be human, you can have hard days, your therapist doesn't even have it all put together, like, I think that's really important. Another comment said, sometimes I just say something along the lines of, not the best, I appreciate you asking, but glad to be here with you. How are you doing? There were actually a lot of responses like that or very similar. And I like how they're acknowledging they're not the best, but they're also acknowledging that they're in an okay place enough to be there for them. And they're putting it back on them so that it doesn't become this massive conversation about the therapist, but also saying and kind of reassuring them that, I'm not doing my best. And also I'm still very much here for you today. And I'm so glad to be here with you and to talk about this and whatever kind of comes next. But I really like that. I saw a lot of people be in agreement with that and saying, it's okay to share while also not sharing too deep. And there were a lot of comments and concerns raised about how, depending upon how much you share, all of a sudden it can kind of become a conversation about the therapist. And we definitely don't want to do that. I don't think that it's fair, and I don't think it's, respectful or even appropriate to get into a long conversation about yourself or any real like deep conversation about yourself with a therapy client. You are their therapist. They are not your therapist. And for clients who are really struggling with people pleasing, with caretaking, with minimizing their own stuff, this could be a great opportunity for them to really utilize those unhealthy skills and try to take care of you as the therapist, which we absolutely do not want. Your clients should absolutely never be put in a situation where they feel like that they need to take care of you. So being mindful of that, I think, is good. And like this commenter and so many others were saying, being able to navigate that in a way where you tell them the truth. You may not tell them all the nitty gritty, but you tell them the truth, but you also refer it back to them and being present for them and being excited and ready to talk about them and what have you. So I definitely agree. And so many people were in agreement as well that that was how they would approach the question of how you're actually doing. Another commenter said, I work with youth and young adults. Lying is non-negotiable. They can pick up on it and that erodes the trust. Now, I don't have to go off about how awful my day is, but I might say, it's been one of those days, but I'm taking care of myself to be here for you, and I'm glad I got to see you today. Very much in line with what the other person was saying about being honest and authentic while also reframing it back to them and being present for them and the goals and things that they're working on so that it doesn't end up becoming about you. So I definitely agree with that. And the piece about clients picking up on things. So I don't think this is really just with youth or young adults. I think being inauthentic can be something that clients pick up on regardless of their age, regardless of the reasons that they've come to therapy, like regardless if you're in person or telehealth. I think that people can genuinely pick up on whether you are being authentic or you're being inauthentic. And if you're coming across as inauthentic or fake, even if you try to mask that, clients are still going to pick up on that. Like I was saying earlier, you might think that you have this all under wraps and everything's looking good and no one can tell that you're having a bad day, but I guarantee you someone is. I guarantee you something that has been said, something that hasn't been said, the way you've acted, a verbal or nonverbal cue you've given off has signaled to this client something is up, or they're just acting different than they normally do. So we definitely don't want to base our behavior off of the assumption that no one's going to pick up on this. But I don't really look at the concept of not telling a client how you're actually doing as lying. And I think that that really stuck out to me in this comment because they said, lying is non-negotiable. And never lie to your clients. I don't think that's a great way to build trust or have a good relationship. I think that creates the potential for a huge rupture in the therapeutic working relationship. Don't lie. It is okay though to not trauma dump on them. Please don't trauma dump on them. Please don't give them a bunch of stuff that they don't need to be worrying about. And so if you are not in a place to maybe say how you're truly doing because you're not doing well, or you're afraid you're going to fall apart, you're going to start crying, or it's going to become about you, maybe just say something generic like, I've been better, and then just leave it at that. Or, it's been one of those days, and then just leave it at that versus trying to go further. I don't think that's lying. I think that's being authentic while also still protecting yourself, because you don't need to tell your clients every single detail, nor should you tell your clients every single detail. And that doesn't mean that you're lying. It just means that you're being selective and you have your own boundaries to maintain a good working relationship, which is key. Some other comments were things like, it's been a rough day, but I'm here, or life be lifing, which I thought was funny. And those are very obviously generic kind of responses. They're not really going into the nitty gritty. You're not sharing information, but I do think those are great ways to just, again, be authentic and human and not just say, I'm fine, everything's great, and acting as if the sun is always shining for you, because that is, it's crap. It's crap. It's not mental health. I don't feel like that helps clients when we model being happy all the time, because that's not what mental health is, and that's not what mental wellness is about. So I really liked those comments. And again, just great ways that you can say something other than you're fine without getting into the nitty gritty. Now, obviously, you're going to have some clients that are genuinely curious, and so that's not a bad thing. It also, though, can open you up to a situation where maybe you are over self-disclosing. And so you might have some of those clients when you say something like, it's been a rough day, or life be lifing, that they might go into this curiosity mode, and they might go into a caretaking mode and say, are you okay? What's wrong? And this is where we need to be very mindful of navigating that in a way that doesn't lose sight of the goal and the purpose, because they're not your therapist, you are their therapist. So whatever you say, I do think that you need to be aware of how a client might interpret that, how they might intake that information, and then what they might say in return. Because if you have a client that you know is going to just immediately latch onto that and ask you a bunch of questions, then I might say, okay, say something different. I might say, okay, don't go there with the client. And then you might have other clients that are just like, I totally get it. It's understandable and it doesn't impact them. So I think a big takeaway from all the comments that I saw was it really, one, depends on the client, and being intentional and just being mindful of thinking ahead of how might this sit with the client, how might they think about this information, how is this going to impact our working relationship? Because you might have clients where it's totally understandable and fine for you to say how you're doing, and it not be something that they feel like really is something they give a lot of thought about, or they don't look at you differently. And you might have another client who very much looks at you differently because of that, or they try to take on your stress because that's something that they got to work on. And so I definitely think one of the big key takeaways here is, you know, your clients. It really depends upon them. I wouldn't say use the same response for everybody. I would say it really just depends. Another big takeaway from all of this for me was, yes, do more than just say you're fine. It is okay to tell clients how you're actually doing, but don't go too deep. Don't get yourself into waters that you then can't get out of. Don't over self-disclose. Be really mindful and intentional with saying something authentic without going too deep. Because again, it's not about us, it's about them. And we don't want to unintentionally put our stuff on a client, because once that's out there and that's in the room, it's there. And then you have to work on figuring out how to navigate that, versus being intentional and mindful from the get-go and maybe saying something different so that it's not this big thing that's in the room that now has to be navigated the same way, if that makes sense. Another takeaway was, don't say you're fine all the time. It's not a relatable human experience. No one is fine all the time. And being a therapist means being able to also be relatable and to be able to develop a good working relationship with someone. And if you are this very like stoic, I never say anything about myself, I'm very impersonal, like this is just, I'm so kind of cut and dry in that way, then I do think that that really limits the ability for you to connect with clients on specific things and to strengthen that working relationship. Because I don't know about you, but when I talk to a provider and they are so like closed off and kind of detached and emotionless, and they don't even seem relatable, they don't even seem like that they could even understand what I'm talking about, it changes how I talk to them. It changes how I feel about them. It changes my desire to want to see them. And so clients oftentimes feel very similarly. So not pretending that you're great, but also not going into a place where you're the person who's fine all the time and they can't relate to you. And another big takeaway is, don't allow it to become something that impacts the client work, or that becomes something that the client feels like that they now need to take care of you because of what you have shared, or has changed the way that they communicate with you because you've shared something maybe over personal and you've really self-disclosed in a situation that maybe you didn't need to or shouldn't have. And then it's created this dynamic where they now worry about you, or worrying about saying something to you that you can't maybe take or hear, or whatever that might be. So don't fall into that caretaking place. Which leads me back to my first conclusion. It really depends on the client. So I thought this was really interesting. I am always getting lots of ideas on videos from just what I'm seeing other therapists talk about online. And so I'm genuinely curious, what is your take now that you've watched the whole video? I hope you're still here. What is your take on this? Do you feel like that when clients say, how are you doing, that you should be authentic and real with them? Are you under the umbrella of, no, I am never going to say that, this is never about me, I'm always going to say I'm fine? Or are you somewhere in the middle? I'm genuinely curious what your thoughts are on this and how you've handled this situation before. So make sure you leave that information below down in the comments. And as always, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe and follow along so that you never miss anything, because I mean, we're really cool around here. Alrighty guys, until next time, bye.